Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back to another video. I hope you are doing well. Today's video, as you saw on the title of the video, is fairy themed, especially heavily inspired by thinkable movies, series, cartoons. And I'm really excited about this video because I grew up watching Tinkerbell and it was one of the very beautiful and memorable movies I ever watched as a kid, and it was so magical and I love it for that. By the time I was really invested in art and art of animations, now I realize, I appreciate it a lot more because it just has so much detail, so much think through the whole process, and I love it. I love all the details, all the stories, the personalities, different, all the things. So I just decided to give it a chance to refresh some memories, and now that I did this spread, I really like to rewatch the whole series again. It was just so beautiful. I tried to gather as much relatable references as I could find because it's kind of hard with references because there's so much and yet not many. It's like I wanted to draw some specific things, I couldn't find the right reference, I had to go for the animation version, and it was some setbacks and all of that, but with all that consideration, I choose my references and started. For example, as I talk about references, this tree that I'm drawing was heavily inspired by the tree in the movie, if you watch the movies, and it's not the same tree, it's some random tree photography I saw on the internet that reminded me of that, so I included that. So not all the references I have in this piece are by the animation, they are out of my imagination, or I have some photorealism pictures that I draw. And you know me, I stylize my pieces as I can, and I think I like to give it the personality or my touch, and it's not specifically that, but I also have some references from the movies itself. I hope so. As I remember, I think the house I draw later on, it's from the animation itself. But overall, I draw something off of references, animation references, or photorealism, and I just draw some myself. What I love about these movies, as I said, is the details. And I love all the teeny tiny details and the touch. For example, all the objects and all the appliances they use, that it's like very big for them, or they repurpose it. For example, they take a bath in a cup, and it's just so funny to me. All their clothes are made out of leaves, and repurposing some stuff for the things that they are not made for, or we don't use it for that purpose, is just so funny to me, and I try to capture some of that. For example, the house that I draw, which is a kettle, tea kettle something, and it's just so funny and I giggle every time I think of that. And I just kept thinking that, wow, the animation team I really would love to get the art book now that I think. Does Tinkerbell has art book? Do you know? If you know, let me know. I would love to get it. As for my sketching way or method, I just use very liney and sketchy shading, and I mostly use shading, especially in these kind of spreads, for just conveying the form and conveying the texture, and it's not necessarily based off a light source, which it got me thinking at the end of the piece that I'm gonna talk about it later on, that I wish it did. For example, when the house finishes, I really like the textures, I like the suggestions of all the forms and the textures, the tree, the leaves, but I wish it was digital and I could have a multiple layer on and just do one path of soft brush on one side to show the depth. I think my sketches don't have that. They are just very, very texture based, and they convey the form and convey the texture, but they are not necessarily have depth, I think. Well, I think that's something I need to improve on, because I have no idea how can I make that kind of suggestion of form. And I don't like to use like those blending stumps. I think they give the piece kind of blurry and dirty kind of a look. I don't like it. I used to use it, but I now like more texture based sketches. I don't know how I can suggest that. You know what I mean? The depth of the light source. If you know any tips, please leave them below. I tried to show depth at some point. For example, something that is further from us, I try to use the atmosphere effect, if you know what I mean. That the things that are a bit further away, they are not as pronounced or as dark as things that are closer to our eyes, or the camera, the angle, whatever. I try to do that, and I show it with my hands sometimes, that I'm trying to capture that. I think that helps, but it's just not as pronounced as I would want it to be. Oh, and I need to say that I start all my sketches with H2, I don't know, pencil that is a bit harder and less prominent. I use that for sketching, and then I use that for the first pass of the texture and the shadowing. And then I go ahead use the B3 pencil to add some more definition and give it the contrast that I like to have. I also had my mechanical pencil, or my B6 pencil, or 6B pencil, I don't know, how do I say that? I didn't use the B6 pencil at all. I don't know, maybe I didn't need it, or I could already control it with my hand pressure and B3 was enough for me. I did use my mechanical pencil for other sketches that are a bit smaller and need more detail. Yeah, I think I use more B3 pencil because it's just in the middle and gives me pretty good control. As you can see that it's pretty small. So that is all I do with my sketches. Usually I just put a very light hand with the H2 pencil just to see where the form goes, or does it fit in the space I want it to. And then I started to add some details, some more, let's say, depth, texture and all of that. And then I go one path with a darker pencil to give depth and definition. Then if I need some more definition or some more detail, I then go with darker pencils, which that doesn't usually happen, and it didn't happen in this piece. For the fairy, of course, you have to have a fairy with fairy spread. I didn't have any specific references of the characters in the movie, the different fairy for different purposes. But the hair ended up looking like the animal fairy. I think her name was Fawn, if I'm not mistaken, and if I remember correctly. But I did not have any references for that. I say that because the fairies in the movies are dressed and she's not, so I didn't want to harass Fawn for that matter, so I just wanted to say that. And why I didn't use clothes on her, because fairy with clothes are also very adorable. As I said before, repurposing all the things that we normally don't use for the purpose. For example, I don't know, wearing shoes that are made of nuts, or tying, I don't know, your hair with a flower or something like that. It could be really funny, but I don't know why I decided to not give her all of that. I also like those fairies that are, very raw and they are just exist, being as simple as they are, and they are adorable. So I just wanted to maybe add another addition of fairies into this fairy spread. And I have to say that I did get some inspiration of the movies, but it's not necessarily a fan art that I have to go directly of a script or of design, so I just like to have my liberty with designing. The fairy at some point turned out to be much darker than the rest of the spread, so I ended up using my kneadable eraser to erase some darkness from her hair, and for example the hand and the hair that is away from us. As I said before, I try to convey some depth, so I just use my kneadable eraser for those purposes. I just didn't show it here. And as long as the eraser goes, I just use any type of eraser I can get my hands to and repurpose it for different purposes in my drawing. Some for erasing a whole bunch, some for just lightening some parts. Sketching this spread made me to go back and look at the movies and the series, and I was thinking that which one is my favorite, and the first one is definitely the most magical to me because it was the first time I think I saw a fairy movie, and it was just so funny, the creation of fairies, that it's from a smile and laugh of the first time of a child, and it's just so sweet. And then I really liked the story of how Tinkerbell trying to find herself. But then again, I really liked the one that Tinkerbell is kind of captured by the little girl in her room. That was also so funny, and all of them are really adorable. Which one is your favorite? Let me know. Or let me know that what would you like to be? What kind of fairy would you like to be? If you could, which one would you choose? I really can't answer that myself because I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe I just do it in the comments. I don't know. But right now, recording this one, it's just empty. So moving on to the objects, for example, the shoes, the accessories to draw here, they are just inspiration from Pinterest, and they are not fully related to the show, and I just really like them, so I drew them, and I think it suits the whole mood of the piece I'm going for. And as I said before, finding references is just so hard for me because there is a picture in my head and I want to convey that, and I struggle sometimes. For example, with the fairy, I really had a clear vision of what fairy pose I want to draw, and then I was like, yeah, now I know what I want to draw, let's find some references. Then I go ahead to find some references because if you know, I am pretty comfortable with drawing or sketching heads, but not yet very comfortable drawing anatomy without photorealism, let's say, reference. So I go ahead to find, and then I see a lot other poses that were not in my mind. They are pretty, but I can't find the one that I want. So now I have doubt. Does the one that I think I like not worth it, or is not pretty, that is not here? Are these gonna be better? And all of these different thoughts. And it makes the reference finding process a bit hard, let's say. I could take a picture of myself, but I think, I don't know, that hasn't worked for me quite well. Maybe it's the perspective in a small room that it doesn't give the same vibe of the photo references you find on the internet, or I'm not definitely a pro. So I really prefer to go off the pictures. So yeah, finding references in that matter, it's a bit hard, but I ended up for the fairy find 2 references to kind of mesh them together to kind of convey the pose I was thinking, and it worked. In these kind of spreads, the finding reference or what to put in certain position may be a bit daunting. But other than that, it was pretty enjoyable for me. It was just such a relaxing time. I was watching a TV show, drawing this, and not related to fairies, but of course. And it was such a great time. And I hope this piece kind of inspires you to maybe try to draw based off a thing you want or a mood. It's just so relaxing, and because there's a mood, everything is so harmonious, and it's just so flattering to the eyes when you see the finished product. And also, this was a new sketchbook that I tried a really serious piece for the first time on. It's pretty big, comparing to those that I usually used, and I was at first scared to use it, but then I saw that what kind of freedom it gives me, and it's really amazing. I hope I can create much more. These flowers were heavily inspired by one scene in the movie. I don't know if I remember which series or which part of the movie it was. That these are just some flowers that the light fairies sleep in, and if you notice, I just had to include a little fairy in the flower, and it was just so funny. Again, repurposing things that we normally don't do the things in. It's just so sweet. So I had to draw the flowers. These are just so very easy, not heavy on the details at all, or not very realistic. It just shows my point. Let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. Thank you all for staying this long and in this part of the video. Please let me know in the comments. I would appreciate your presence. As I always said, thank you so much for being here. I hope you had a great time watching this, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.